And it's a dude standing over, it's like 7 feet tall, fresh out of jail. He had a tank top. I run down on the guy. I give it to him, 10 years old. Ha! I once robbed my whole gym, the whole gym.
Like
70 kids,
robbed them?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans. I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with me.
Didn't you call Fat Joe hip-hop's biggest liar?
100%.
How's that?
Fat Joe's always lying.
Fat Joe has secured his spot as one of the greats in hip-hop. But what happens when your own accomplishments don't feel like they're enough, and you start adding extra seasoning to your stories, to the point where people accuse you of straight up making things up?
Too long ago, Fat Joe came out and said he lied in 95% of his rhymes. What did you think of that?
He told the truth for the first time, that he's a liar. That you can't believe nothing that comes out of his mouth. He's a liar.
Over the years, Joe has earned himself a spot on the Mount Rushmore of rappers with the most questionable, legendary, and downright unbelievable stories in rap. Let's break it down. So one of the wildest, most over-the-top stories Fat Joe has ever told has to be the one about this so-called 7-foot dude he claims he ran into as a kid. According to Joe, he was only about 10 years old, chilling at home in the projects, hungry and trying to cook something up, even though by his own admission, he had zero idea how to actually cook.
I'm 10 years old. I'm in the house minding my business in the projects, and I'm making some food. I don't know why I don't know how to cook.
Then out of nowhere, he hears a girl screaming in the hallway. Now, most 10-year-olds would have panicked or hidden, but Joe says his instinct was to grab a machete, because apparently, back then, having a machete lying around the house was normal. He opens the door, and what he describes next sounds like something straight out of a movie scene. Joe says he saw a girl he recognized from his building wearing a dress and trying to cover herself up while apples, oranges, and bread were scattered across the floor. Towering over her was this massive guy. Joe swears the man was 7 feet tall and fresh out of jail, and he looked like he was about to do something terrible.
I hear a girl scream. I open the door, and it's a girl I know from my building. She's Jehovah's Witness. She has a dress on. She's covering her private parts. The oranges is on the floor, the bread. And it's a dude standing over her. It's like 7 feet tall, fresh out of jail. He had a tank top.
So, what does 10-year-old Joey Crack do? According to him, he charged straight at this giant, swinging the machete. He says he managed to slash the man's arm, chased him down into the stairwell, and even hit him again before the guy realized what was happening. Once the man figured out it was just some chubby little kid from the projects coming at him with a blade, he supposedly took off running.
I run down on the guy. I give it to him, 10 years old. Ha! Now I know if you're a coward, you don't believe this story, you don't understand it, you might have called 911, screamed. No, I gave it to him. I hit him on the other side. Ha! Oh, this guy's like, well, he's a grown man, 7 feet tall. He realizes, oh, this is just a fat little kid, 10 years.
The girl, who Joe described as probably the most decent girl in the whole project, begged him not to tell anyone. Her family was strict, and she didn't want the story getting out and causing her trouble. So Joe says he kept the whole thing to himself for decades.
She begged me, because her family was so strict to not tell a story. So I never told a story. I was going to tell a story in my book.
Fast forward years later, Joe was about to include the story in his book, but decided to pull it at the last minute because of the promise he made. But then, at his brother's funeral, that same girl showed up and told the story herself, confirming Joe's version in front of everyone. Joe said even he was shocked hearing her finally speak on it after all those years.
But at my brother's funeral, she shows up. I haven't seen her in 30 years. And in the middle of, I'm rich, in the middle of the funeral, she says, Joey saved my life. He saved my life. A guy was trying to me, this, that. Joey came out with the machete.
Now, the problem is, as you can imagine, a lot of people hear this and think the whole thing sounds completely ridiculous. A 10-year-old with a machete scaring off a 7-foot ex-con? It reads more like an action movie script than real life. But the thing is, Joe doesn't seem to care if anybody believes it or not. He tells it with the same confidence and conviction he always brings. Now, if this story sounded out there, wait until you hear this one, because Fat Joe took it to a whole other level. At one point, Joe claimed that back in high school, he actually robbed his entire gym class. Not a handful of kids, not a small group. We're talking about 70 students. According to him, he walked into the gym with no weapon, no backup, just his presence alone, and somehow intimidated dozens of teenagers into handing over their stuff.
I once robbed my whole gym. The whole gym.
Like
70 kids
robbed them?
without a gun. Like, yo, everybody give me your coats, give me your Walkmans, give me your this.
And Joe even said he ended up with so much loot that he couldn't carry it all by himself. So what happened next? In his version of events, some of the same kids he had just robbed actually helped him carry everything out.
I couldn't even carry it. Some of the guys I robbed had to help me carry the stuff with them.
Like, people you just stuck up are now volunteering as your helpers. That's the part that really threw people for a loop. Content creator Will Mills spoke on this exact story and pretty much voiced what everybody was already thinking. He broke it down logically. The idea of robbing an entire gym full of 70 kids in the Bronx and not one person resisting, not one person running to tell a teacher, not one fight breaking out. It just doesn't sound realistic.
He said he robbed 70 kids by himself at no weapon, at hand point. Went around, robbed everybody. So everybody stayed put. Nobody decided to jump him. He said he had so much stuff that some of the people he robbed helped him carry it. Come on, bro.
He even gave Joe the benefit of the doubt, saying maybe Joe did rob a few kids here and there. 1 or 2? Sure, that's believable. But the whole class? And then getting free labor from the victims to haul away the stolen goods? That's where the whole tale starts falling apart. But of course, that wasn't the end of Joe's legendary stories. Because he's taken it way beyond street tales and started inserting himself into hip-hop history at the highest level. And in 2025, if you're an older rapper looking to stir up some controversy and remind people of your relevance, the easiest targets are e-gens who aren't here anymore to fact-check you. And in hip-hop, that means Tupac and Biggie. One of the boldest examples came when Fat Joe once implied that he was personally one of the reasons Tupac was kept safe while locked up. Let's rewind to 1995. The East Coast versus West Coast beef was at its peak, and Joe was on the radio talking about it. According to him, some things he said on air caused tension with Puerto Rican inmates who were loyal to him, and somehow Tupac got wind of it from behind bars.
And they asked me the question, yo, Joe, what you think about Tupac and all that? I said, yo, he's cool, but, you know, if they step to me, it's going. Tupac's locked up upstate in New York. The Puerto Ricans hear that, and they're like, Papi, Tupac got beef with Fat Joe, yo, no.
Joe claims Pac personally called him from prison, asking for help dealing with a Puerto Rican inmate who was supposedly giving him problems. Joe says they had a talk, cleared the air, and from there, he sent word to his guy Charlie Rock LD to hold Pac down inside. In Joe's version of the story, that's why Pac stayed safe in jail, because Joe made sure of it.
Tupac was like, yo, these Puerto Ricans is on me. Like, you said something in the radio. I don't got a problem with you, Joe. Like this, I know what's up, this. And so, you know, we sent the kite out to the Puerto Ricans and be like, nah.
But here's the thing. Even though Tupac isn't here to confirm or deny it, there are still people who were alive during that time and close to Pac who can call BS. And that's exactly what happened recently when Tupac's cousin, William Lassane, addressed the story directly. He completely shut it down. According to Lassane, while it's true Fat Joe had influence with the Puerto Rican population, the idea that Pac needed his help inside makes zero sense. He explained that the prison Pac was in was actually filled with people who respected and admired him. In fact, from the moment he arrived, Pac had strong individuals around him, already ready to protect and support him. They even greeted him with care packages to make sure he was good, and Pac didn't even want their help like that.
But a lot of people who run the prisons in the New York State penal system are people that we know. They people that love us. They family members, man. Tupac wasn't in a prison where people was going to walk all over him. That wasn't going to be the situation. He was in prison with people who were strong.
Lassane went further, saying that the only reason Pac was eventually taken out of general population and put in segregation wasn't because he was being bullied or pressured, but because the officials saw how much love and protection he was getting and didn't want any incidents to pop off. So the whole story about Pac calling Joe for help with a random Puerto Rican inmate, it just doesn't add up.
Officers, knowing Pac's connection with some of the strongest people in Clinton, taking him out of population and putting him in segregation so that he don't incite anything. Does that make sense to you? That some Puerto Ricans is gonna put pressure on him so that Pac can call Joe, of all people?
Now, after Pac, we've got to talk about the Biggie claim, because this one might be the boldest of them all. In 2023, Fat Joe sat down with Cam Capone and decided to drop what he thought was going to be a bombshell revelation. According to him, back in the day, he and the Notorious B.I.G. actually recorded an entire project together. Not just a track or two, Joe said it was a full album, somewhere between 8 to 10 songs deep. But he claims the project was too disrespectful toward Tupac, so it got shelved, and those songs were conveniently destroyed or lost forever.
In the Bronx and Harlem. Like, I was 14, little kid, you know, the toughest in that age, but really going to dinner. I want to have the money, I want to have the girls, I want to have the jewelry, I want to have the cars, I want to have the this, you know? And so, you know, thank God I changed my life towards music.
Now, at first glance, some folks thought maybe there's something to this. Joe and Biggie did know each other, both were New York guys moving in similar circles, and there was mutual respect there. So on the surface, the idea of them linking up in the studio isn't that crazy. But once people started digging into Joe's story, things didn't quite line up. For starters, the number of songs kept changing every time Joe told the story. Let's rewind to 2018, when he was on Vlad TV. Back then, Joe said he and Big were working on an album, but only managed to record 4 songs before it fell apart. He even mentioned Puff Daddy and the Hitman being involved in the production. Fast forward to 2021. Joe's on Instagram Live with Swizz Beatz and Timbaland during the peak of the Verzuz wave, and well, the number shifts again. This time, Joe says they recorded 5 tracks together.
You know, I say stuff, Tim, and they always say I lie or I say too much. You know, I worked on an album with Biggie. We cut about 5 songs together.
And then by the time he got to Cam Capone in 2023, that 5 had somehow turned into a whole album of nearly 10 songs. But here's where the debunking really kicks in. Lil Cease, who was practically Biggie's right-hand man in Junior M.A.F.I.A., stepped in to clear things up. In December 2021, Cease was on Vlad TV and broke down exactly how Big felt about the East Coast-West Coast beef. According to Cease, Biggie hated the idea of escalating things with Pac. He told his team directly that dissing Tupac was absolutely off limits. He even gave them an ultimatum. If any of you guys record a Pac diss, I'm cutting you off. I don't care who you are. That alone tells you everything about Biggie's mindset. He wasn't looking to feed the fire. He wanted to make music and keep it moving. And that's why Joe's story about a whole album full of Pac disses makes 0 sense. If Big wouldn't even let his own crew record a stray diss track, why would he suddenly go record 8 or 10 of them with Fat Joe?
I've seen an interview from Fat Joe, and he said that him and Biggie was working on an album together, and he said that they had a whole lot of Tupac disses on the album. How you feel about him saying that?
I don't think so. I'm sure I was around for a lot of stuff, and I didn't hear none of that at all.
Then, in January 2022, Cease doubled down. He popped up on The Art of Dialogue and spoke directly about the alleged Joe-Biggie collab album. Cease said he never saw Big and Joe in the studio working on anything together, and he was with Big all the time. He admitted that maybe they had conversations about possibly doing something. Rappers always throw those kinds of ideas around, but as far as actual recorded songs, Cease said there were none. He also emphasized another key point. Biggie wasn't the type to make entire diss records. He might throw a slick line here and there, That's part of hip-hop culture, but a whole project dedicated to disrespecting Tupac? That just wasn't him. Especially when the beef was already spiraling and costing lives. Big didn't want more gasoline on the fire. To pile onto the debunking, there's also this strange little rumor that's been floating around the internet for years. Supposedly, way back in the World Star hip-hop days, there was a clip of Diddy himself addressing the whole Fat Joe and Biggie album claim. According to the rumor, Diddy flat out denied ever knowing about it. The problem is that no one can find the clip anymore. It's like one of those pieces of hip-hop internet history that either got lost in the shuffle or maybe never existed in the first place. But here's what makes that rumor interesting. Fans in general don't buy the idea that Diddy, of all people, would just let a full Biggie project vanish into thin air. This is Puff Daddy we're talking about. The same guy who built Bad Boy into a machine, who made millions off posthumous Biggie releases like Born Again and duets, The Final Chapter. If there was really an album sitting around, do you honestly think Diddy would just shrug and let it go? Not likely. He's a businessman to the core. If there was music, he would have found a way to monetize it, unless there was a very good reason to lock it away. But on the flip side, if the songs were as Joe claims, full of harsh disses aimed at Tupac, maybe Diddy did shelve the whole thing on purpose. Not because it didn't exist, but because dropping it would have poured gasoline on an already dangerous fire. Pac and Big's beef had already spiraled into something deadly. Then you've got Cuban Link stepping into the conversation, and he's someone who's not shy about calling Fat Joe out. Cuban, who was right there in those circles with Big Pun and Joe, has consistently said that this supposed album is pure exaggeration. He admits Joe had a relationship with Biggie, but the way Joe tells it, like they were in the lab cooking up a whole project together, Cuban says that's not how it happened. Cuban even broke down his own experience with Biggie, which sheds some light on where this album talk might have come from. According to him, one night he, Pun, and Joe went to Diddy's studio, where they linked up with Biggie. For Cuban, this was his very first time meeting the legend. After some quick introductions, Biggie told them about this track idea he had. He wanted something with a Spanish gangster vibe, a flavor that would stand out, a Spanish intro to give the song an edge. Now, out of the crew, Cuban was the only one who actually spoke fluent Spanish, but at the time, he was a rookie. He wasn't sure if he was ready to jump in front of Biggie and deliver like that. Pun, being the big brother figure, pushed him to do it. With Pun hyping him up, Cuban stepped to the mic, and the two of them laid down this Spanish intro exactly the way Biggie wanted it. Biggie was hyped, giving them props for bringing his idea to life. After that, Fat Joe jumped on the mic and added his own touch to the track.
Puffy told Big, hey, yo, tell them what you want from them so they could do it in the studio. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they could do it. You know, because you say you wanted some Spanish shit. You know what I'm saying? And, Pun and Joe, was there. And Pun looked at me. I was the rookie at the time, real rookie. Like, y'all want me to do this? So they both put me to do right? So me and Pun went. So then after me and Pun went and did our stuff. Biggie was like, yeah, he was hyped up. Then Joe went in there and he put his spice on top on a separate track by himself.
And here's where things get twisted. Cuban claims that Joe has been taking credit for that Spanish intro all these years. He says Joe is using that one moment in the studio as proof of this mythical album with Biggie. Basically, according to Cuban, Joe took one song, one collab moment that involved multiple people, and stretched it into this massive story about a full album that never existed.
He used that little snippet right there to sell the fact that he did an album with Biggie. Incredible liar. Disgusting.
For Cuban, the truth is simple. There was no album. There was no 8 to 10 tracks tucked away somewhere in Bad Boy's vaults. There was just one track, one night in the studio, with everybody vibing and adding their piece. But if you thought these stories were wild, things get even uglier when you get to Fat Joe's history with Big Pun. See, for years, Joe has built this narrative where he's painted himself as the loyal friend, the big brother figure who always looked out for Pun's family after his passing. In interviews, he said over and over that he gave Pun's wife money, tried to help her set up businesses, and made sure she and the kids were straight financially. On the surface, that sounds noble, like Joe was carrying the weight for his fallen brother. But according to the people who were really behind the scenes, that couldn't be further from the truth. One guy in particular, Gongu Gu Roach, who's basically made a career out of helping artists and their families recover lost royalties and publishing money, came forward and exposed Joe in a major way. Gongu says not only did Joe fail to help Pun's wife financially, but he was actually robbing her blind for more than a decade.
Joe was all over the radio basically saying, I gave her $750,000, I gave her $250,000, I told her enough's enough. Everybody bought it and believed it. So it was all lies and mediation. We had him admit that he never gave her a dollar in his life.
Oh, so he didn't give her no
Nothing,
money?
not a dollar in his life he never gave her, period.
Here's how it supposedly went down. Gongu discovered that Fat Joe had been stealing Big Pun's royalties for 14 years straight. Instead of Pun's family getting what was owed to them, Joe was allegedly generating fake royalty statements and teaming up with Jellybean Benitez to funnel these bogus reports to Pun's widow.
According to Liza, after he passed away, Joe was telling her that, oh no, he owed me money. You know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden, a bunch of fake royalty statements started to come biannually for about 14 years, from about 2000 to 2014, fake royalty statements was coming out.
2000 to 2014?
Yeah.
According to Gongu, Poon's wife had already gone through multiple lawyers trying to fight this before he came into the picture, but none of them could get results. When Gongu stepped in, though, he was finally able to take Joe to court and expose what was happening.
Once I got the royalty statements, the same stuff that they had, it probably took me like a minute and a half to see the deception. I called her up, told her I paid for the case, paid for the auditor, took him to court.
And this is where Fat Joe's lies really start stacking up, because even after losing in court, Joe went on interviews saying there was never a court case at all. He just looked into the camera and denied the whole thing like it never happened, when there's paperwork proving it did. Gongu himself even admitted he was shocked at how easily the public swallowed Joe's version of the story. And it didn't stop there. When a Big Pun biopic was being developed, the people behind the project wanted Fat Joe on board, thinking he could use his clout, his connections, and his influence to help push the movie into the spotlight. But according to Gongu, Joe wouldn't agree to help unless Pun's wife came out publicly and said that he never stole from her. And of course, she refused, because why would she lie to protect the same person who had been cheating her and her kids out of money for years?
We were trying to do a Big Pun movie and stuff like that, right? And basically, we were like, hey, let's get Joe involved. You know what I'm saying? Because it's gonna be bigger with Joe. If you do it without Joe, Joe can get all these other people involved. But he was basically saying like, well, if you go on Instagram or if you go out there and tell publicly that I never stole from you, then I'll work with you. Otherwise, I'm not working with you. She's like, why would I do that? You stole from me.
So at this point, the picture looks real clear. Fat Joe wasn't the generous friend who stepped in to play hero for Pun's family. Instead, he was someone who took advantage of them while presenting himself as their savior to the public. And while Joe still gets his flowers and respect in hip-hop for his long career, these kinds of revelations have put a huge dent in his reputation.